reconsider how we're approaching. The traditional models are getting disrupted, and we have new entrants. So data scientists are now as valuable in the pharma industry as is, let's say, a big clinician. So the rock stars of the industry now are data scientists, and I think that's an interesting trend that we are witnessing. Quick reflections, again, I just got this yesterday from the WHO. So what's happening is the use of, again, our speaker alluded to that, the use of AI and machine learning will continue to expand. AI has, and I don't know how many of you are tuned into the 5G and the 6G by 2030, they're going to be smart hospitals. Internet of Things is going to be replaced by Internet of Everything, and that's going to be an interesting space. It's not just Internet of Medical Things, but the new word now is Intelligent Internet of Medical Things. So what's happening is, while the smartphone was dominating and trying to get digital components in, but that's not enough. So smart healthcare will be replaced by intelligent healthcare. So I think those are the buzzwords, you as students. I think you need to get a lot many familiar, because the power of computing has become so incredible. So edge computing, for example, right? So I think the power of computing, I don't know how many of you tuned into the Moore's Law and Clayton Christensen's famous work, a Harvard business professor who kind of said that it will multiply every 2 years, but we've seen that it's happening even faster. So 6G is upon us right now. And the way healthcare will be dispensed is going to be a completely different way. And the pundits are predicting smart hospitals and the interconnectedness of everything. So it's going to be Internet of Everything that's going to be dawning upon us. And therefore, AI has the potential to drastically reduce the amount of time required to develop a new drug. Of course, innovations will occur. We have now virtual arms, we have synthetic arms, that will replace the traditional randomized arm, right, a placebo arm, if you will. So these are quickly what I just thought. I will say some of the things already covered by my previous speaker. So I think the things that matter to all the industry players remains the same. So AI and data analytics. The interesting thing is, when I started many years back in clinical development, we used to go to the power of whatever the gravity, let's say, resided in the hospital. So we designed our protocol to operationalize it around the hospital. Now that is being replaced, we're going to where the patient is. So it's being designed around the patient. SA development, advanced manufacturing, you heard us previous speaker talk synthetic biology. I just quickly alluded, I want you to really be curious about virtual trials, because that's the next big thing and an opportunity for you to impact there. High performance computing, I already talked about that. Cybersecurity, if we have the time, we'll talk about that. So I think, interesting, this is 2018 data, but I think this has moved on. I think this is 4 years old, but still, nevertheless, the point is we generate lots of data every day. So what the world generates 2.5 quintillion bytes. This is in 2018. And the point is, when we look at data, the point, it should be, there are FAIR principles. So just remember this, it should be findable, it should be accessible, it should be interoperable, and of course it should be reusable. So the FAIR principles guide data, and of course a very quick snippet on, because industry, we are very privileged to be sitting on big data. So the company I work for, Novartis, does 500 trials a year. So we do generate a lot of data. I think we have the maximum data in all of industry, and big data. So I think these are, again, for the benefit, the 7 V's as they call it about big data: volume, velocity, variety, veracity, validity, value, volatility. We don't have the time, but I think, so I think I will quickly take you to some quick other trends. I won't take more than a couple of minutes. Again, the point is, look at the fabulous growth of the clinical trial industry. This is only from 2011. I joined in 2000. So 2022 we had 450,000 trials registered, and this was only up till March 2022. So I think it's incredible how the industry is kind of exploding. And clinical trials are generating triple the amount of data than previous decade. Therefore, I have now got some certificates in data science. I had no clue what data science is all about, but I think it was imperative, and I think it's important for all of you to start getting, if you have not already begun the journey into data science. And I think, as I alluded before, patients' experience is the center of that. Again, I won't go into the details, but the trials also are changing. We had traditional randomized controlled trials, right? But now we're looking at umbrella trials. We're looking at a single disease with multiple interventions, umbrella trial. A basket trial is multiple disease with a single intervention. Adaptive, platform, dose ranging, so, and Bayesian. And so we're moving, as I mentioned earlier, from smart healthcare now to intelligent healthcare. And we always measure quality of life, but as you enter the industry and you start seeing that, you start have to looking at quality of services, quality of experiences, and all of those in addition to quality of life. So forces facing, I won't go into this, but there are incredible cost, complexity, risk, and more important, trust issues, right? So to conclude, we need a new kind of leadership. It's not just pharma leader. We need an ecosystem leader. So please challenge yourself to say, how can I be the ecosystem leader of the future? And somebody who's very resilient, and COVID has taught us that, and who can demonstrate great agility, and also invest in new capabilities. We have something on antibody drug conjugates, radioligand therapy. So we need to have newer skills, newer competencies, adopting end-to-end partner ecosystems, and planning for strategic workforce. I already mentioned we are sitting on a huge shortage of talent in the industry. And I'll conclude by saying that we need to really be at the forefront of course, embracing digital. So on that note, I'll stop here, and I really want to thank all of you and the chairpersons for giving me the additional minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rai. In spite of the fact slide little bit messed up, you finished within time, so thanks a lot. Any questions from the audience? Maybe I'll start, and then, in the initial phases, you mentioned about the number of drugs approval, particularly coming from US FDA. And recently the trend has been a little bit higher compared to, so it keeps on going up and down, but overall the trend is becoming, and the number of approval really depends upon the regulatory tightness. One of the example is Alzheimer's disease, where US FDA relaxed a little bit,
yes,
and the drug was approved, and there was so much of feedback. Your opinions and your how your reaction is upon that FDA should relax a little bit, and promote a little bit of more drug approvals,
yes,
or it depends upon the area to area. So because.
yes. So I think to your question on how much appetite there is for risk within the regulatory authorities, in the past 22 years since I'm in the industry, I'm seeing a bit of a dynamic thing. While at times it was, I moved in straight, you might be aware 1996 was the epic year for regulatory, when it was a maximum number of approvals. But after that the industry went into kind of a funk, I guess, because of the recalls, and we all know that. Then it went and had a wake-up call and kind of rebooted itself. Today I see a very different kind of a regulatory makeup. Scott Catlett, he's I think incredible in the FDA commissioners. I think the quality of interactions we are having before at the IND stage or pre-IND discussions, I think the regulators are partnering with us because we are also we've moved into a very bold area, we're doing bold science, we are really doing incredible, and I think of course the failure rate is high because the science has gone so much deeper and so much bigger and bolder. But the interesting thing is regulators are willing to even accept real world evidence data. And so I'm thinking the regulators are not seeing it as putting in enough safety measures around the approvals and giving us time to keep developing the asset. So while the science has become bolder, the attrition has gone higher. Of course, that's a fact. That's why drug development costs have gone more. But the FDA is partnering. I think the health authorities, even I was at a statistics regulatory workshop recently, and interestingly, that was run by regulators of Europe. So I think there is so much appetite for doing it together and collaborating and Transliterate. I don't know how many of you tuned into the latest thing. I really encourage students to study Transliterate. I think that's a great thing because they're also looking at ICH and saying is that can we revisit it? So they are introspecting as well, and I think the industry is working quite well with the regulators now. There's a sweet spot and the trust is building back again slowly.
Yeah, thank you. That exactly, I can elaborate a little bit on the US FDA. You can have so many pre-IND meetings without spending a single penny. And that is all to help. Any other question from the audience? Yes.
Okay, please come in.
Thank you. I mean, it was incredible information, and I saw a lot of pharmaceuticals also where you mentioned of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data science, which has become going to be important. And one of the things which you mentioned on the patient-centric approach, and also we are seeing in the wellness industry, like a lot of personalization is need of personalization is coming up. Like one shoe doesn't fit all kind of approach, right? So. Is there any also you have insight on the personalization in the drug discovery or the?
Yes. So the problem is I have the mic. I can keep talking because this is my favorite topic. But yes, the answer is a quick yes because that is what drives us. Because while we have 10,000 diseases that we know, the treatments exist for only 500 and they're all mostly symptomatic. So we are moving into prevent and cure. And we are understanding biology, we still don't know a lot. We know only perhaps maybe 5% of what we need to know. So I think as we're moving into that, precision medicine is at the heart of what innovative pharma is all about. So yeah, we can have perhaps that, we can take it offline, but it is at the heart of what we do. So, sorry for that very abrupt.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other question? If not, let's give a big hand to Dr. Rai. Oh, there was.
Thank you, everybody.
Dr. Rai, 1 second.
Hello.
So we would like to present this memento to Dr. Kamala Rai for.
Ma'am, my question is there.
Yeah, I think we have a question.
Yeah, ma'am.
There is, I can't see. Okay.
Okay, sorry. मैं दूर बैठी हूँ. Good afternoon, ma'am. And thank you to give this a beautiful knowledge. Artificial intelligence is my favorite topic because I'm working on it. So I want to ask that one word you are using again and again, that is a smart hospital somewhere else. So what it means that robots, they're smart hospital or the dosage we are giving, that is an automated way. What it means, but I'm confused in that word.
It means that also, but I think smart hospital means that it's all connected. It's connected. I mean, the patient experience is connected to the hospital. It's not disconnected. Right now, the traditional model is all disconnected, right? Between two visits, the physician doesn't know what's happening with the patient. So I think when we move to the smart hospitals, again, I can keep talking, but I'll take it offline. I'll tell you what I mean. There's a very nice white paper on smart hospitals. It's all about connected health. How 6G, right now, metaverse is changing the dynamic of healthcare. Although metaverse is not, it's 1992 concept. But augmented reality and when they start building edge, because right now, what's happening is the systems are disconnected. Although they may be digitized, they're disconnected. And it doesn't mean robots will take over, but I think what I see happening is the connectedness of health. When one smartphone and the physician's smartphone and all that will be an intelligent phone, not just a smartphone, and then exchange data much more seamlessly. And so decisions will be real time and quality of interventions will be so much more better.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. What a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We would also like to invite Mr. Arjun on stage. We missed you presenting the memento. Sorry for that. Please. We now move over to the next speaker in today's session, Dr. Sumit Madan. Dr. Sumit Madan is currently working as Associate Vice President, Product Development Research at Sun Pharma's R&D Center at Gurgaon. He had completed his Master's in Pharmaceutical Sciences from Delhi Institute of Pharmaceutical Science and Research, and he did his PhD in the field of Biomedical Engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. He specializes in formulation development of oral solid dosage forms, 505(b)(2) products, and contributing to CMC section of regulatory filings. So with this brief introduction, over to you, Dr. Sumit Madan.
Okay, hi, good afternoon everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the chairpersons for such kind words to introduce myself, and thanks to NIPER and the organizers, specifically Professor Bansal, for inviting me to deliver a talk at this grand event at NIPER. So, for today, the topic which I have selected to talk about is an area which is bothering for the pharma industry since last 3 to 4 years now. And I strongly feel that today it's the time that academia needs to step up, step in, and come to collaborate with the industry to address this bothering concern. So the topic is achieving nitrosamine controlled drug formulations, an opportunity for academia industry collaborations. This presentation reflects my views, and these are not the views of Sun Pharma. I will start with an introduction why nitrosamines are a concern as in date, the risk assessment and control for nitrosamines, what is the approach which is being followed both for the APIs as well as for the drug product, a perspective on the acceptable intake limits, safety and toxicity assessment, and where can academia step in to support the industry. I hope most of the people sitting here would know what is a nitrosamine. I just refresh everyone and give a brief introduction. Nitrosamine means a class of compounds having the chemical structure of a nitroso group bonded to an amine. They are also referred to as NOCs or N-nitroso compounds. When is the nitrosamine formed? Nitrosamine is formed when there are secondary, tertiary or quaternary amines which interact with nitrite salts under acidic conditions. Because under these acidic conditions, the nitrite salts form nitrous acid, which reacts with an amine to form a nitrosamine. As such, nitrosamines are not, which is something new. They have always been present in the environment. Nitrosamines are common in food, water, tobacco. The chemistry is not new, the potency is not new, the toxicity is not new. Everyone, all of us have been exposed to some level of nitrosamines. And publications as old as 1968, they do report that when nitrites and secondary amines were concurrently fed to the animals, tumors were produced. Nitrosamines are genotoxic, they are carcinogenic, they are part of ICH M7 cohort of concern. The pharma industry got sensitized in 2019 specifically, and nitrosamines popped up as a concern when FDA and other international agencies started finding traces of nitrosamines in the sartans. Specifically, it started with valsartan in June 2018, when FDA was informed of the presence of an impurity, NDMA, in valsartan. Subsequent to that, other sartans like losartan and irbesartan formulations from different manufacturers across the world, they also reported unacceptable levels of nitrosamines. And after sartans, then there were reports in ranitidine, nizatidine, and metformin. All this was early 2018, and then the end of 2018, early 2019, when these nitrosamines got reported, all this made clear that there was a need for a risk assessment strategy for potential nitrosamines in any pharmaceutical product where there was a risk for their presence. And as we have moved from 2018 to 19 to current 2022, we see that there has been an evolution of the understanding. Evolution of the entire industry has taken place with regard to understanding the nitrosamines. Before 2021, all the recalls which took in US specifically, they involved small and more common nitrosamines like NDMA and NDA. Focus was majorly on the 8 nitrosamines, which all the regulatory agencies have also listed. And most of these smaller nitrosamines were present in the pharmaceuticals due to the contribution from the reagents or the solvents used in the API. Post 2021, what we see is now additional nitroso impurities from the API itself, the raw materials, the reagents are gaining tremendous importance. And what we call these are the NDSRIs, which are the nitrosamine drug substance related impurities. Means these are those impurities which are formed when the API itself is a secondary amine or a tertiary amine. And it is capable of nitrosating under suitable conditions. NDSRIs are formed when the API, the intermediate used in the route of synthesis or the impurities of the API are secondary or tertiary amines. Example of the recalls due to NDSRIs include varenicline, which was due to N-nitroso-varenicline, and in case of quinapril HCTZ, which was a recent one in March 2022, when Pfizer recalled due to N-nitroso-quinapril. I'll quickly skip this. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3 is something which has been published by all the regulatory agencies in terms of risk assessment for the nitrosamines. As a step 1, you need to do a risk evaluation to identify whether the API or the finished product is at risk of nitrosamine. Step 2, if the risk is identified, proceed with the confirmatory testing. And if the presence of nitrosamine is confirmed, that's a step 3. We need to implement effective risk mitigating measures through submission of variation. These are the limits which are proposed by various agencies now for all the known nitrosamines. FDA, EMA, Health Canada, and Visa, they have published their acceptable intake limits, which are almost similar, but these are only for the published known nitrosamines till now. When we talk about the risk factors associated with the nitrosamines, we start with the API. When we talk about the API, it could be use of nitrate salts and esters. It could be the nitrite formation by the oxidation of hydroxylamine or the nitrate release from nitroaromatic precursors. It could be use of disinfected water in the presence of secondary or tertiary amines. It could be oxidation of hydrosamine, hydroxides and hydrozones by hypochlorite, air or oxygen. So that means even oxidation is also a trigger sometimes for oxidation of these hydrazines and hydroxides, which leads to nitrosamines. Use of contaminated raw materials or starting materials or intermediates and carryover of nitrosamines deliberately generated. So these are the 6 risk factors which we need to identify when we are doing a risk assessment for the API. And with regard to the manufacturing aspects, with regard to the manufacturing area and the facility, the GMP facility, we need to consider the cross-contamination due to different processes being run successively in the same manufacturing line, carryover of the impurities, or use of contaminated, recovered or recycled materials where the recovery is outsourced to third parties. So, because recovery processes carried out in non-dedicated equipment also needs to be considered, and there could be a contribution from these aspects as well. When we come to the risk identification, when we start the process of risk identification for the API, we need to firstly, the first basic test is we need to look at the structure of the API, whether there is a risk of NDSRI or not. Because there could be the APIs like varenicline, propranolol, quinapril, where itself the structure itself indicates that there is a secondary amine or a tertiary amine. And going forward, currently what we are focusing on is secondary, tertiary, quaternary amines. Going forward, we are anticipating risks could even be due to N-alkyl amide, amide, carbamate, or any other functional group which can be nitrosated in the API. There is a risk for nitrosamine formation. Then there are APIs which do not have the structural alert for nitrosamines, but the reagents or the solvents which are used in the manufacturing process may involve nitrite or nitrate, which could nitrosate. For example, in case of the valsartan recall, which happened when the FDA recalled valsartan, NDMA was identified as a contaminated, and the contribution for NDMA was due to the API process which used DMF as a solvent and sodium nitrite as a quenching agent. Similarly, in case of ranitidine, when nitrosamines were observed, it was due to nitromethane, which was used as the nitrosating agent, which could have served as a nitrosating agent. Quality of water, which is used in the manufacturing facilities, both at API and formulation, is again a critical factor which needs to be considered. Potable or the deionized water may have nitrite and NOCs, which needs to be seriously evaluated. Even the shared equipment should be free of nitrite, nitrates and amines. So quickly I'll go through the questions which need to be answered for evaluation of the API. Whether the starting material have possibility of presence of nitrosamines, whether the manufacturing process involves recycled solvents, any of the recycled solvents have amines, NOCs or nitrosating agents. If nitrosamines are being monitored in the API, then how are the acceptance criteria determined? Are there sensitive analytical methods in place for these nitrosamines? Is the facility that makes the API dedicated to make only this API? Are sartans or any other API with known risks related to nitrosamines being made in the same facility? And does the cleaning validation program take into account the formation of presence of nitrosamines? So once the risk assessment for API is done, next we need to consider the controls. When we talk about the controls, we need to optimize. So that is more at the API end, but even we as formulation scientists are ultimately responsible for making the finished product in dosage form. We need to be sensitive enough that is the control of nitrosamines being done in the API or not. So the approaches which are followed for control of nitrosamines in the API include avoiding the reaction conditions that will produce nitrosamines. Like in pioglitazone, it was found that the NDMA formation was avoidable by eliminating DMF as the nitrosable solvent. And specifically, acidic conditions promote the formation of nitrosamines. Generally, when we move to neutral or alkaline conditions, the tendency to form nitrosamines gets reduced. Then we have to be cautious when using the solvents like DMF. Process needs to be designed so that which can facilitate the purge of nitrosamine impurities. Removing the quenching steps from main reaction mixture, avoiding cross-contamination. Based on the risk analysis, we need to establish the safety levels of the API, provide a control strategy, and if needed, control the relevant NOCs in the intermediates or the API. Once the risk assessment for the API is done, now we come to the risk assessment for the drug product, where the root cause analysis would involve the study of nitrosating capability of the formulation. So this can be done by using a common amine, mixing it with a mixture of different nitrites and see whether there is a nitrosamine capability of the formulation or not. Major source of nitrosamine impurities in the drug product are the APIs. Because API may comprise amine, alkylated amines, any amine, if it is there, a secondary, a quaternary, a tertiary amine, we are at risk. But in formulation, what we can do is we need to cut down the source of nitrites and nitrates. And the major source of nitrites in DP are the excipients. So when the drug substance, I'll move to, so there are some excipients like prolamine and DNC colors which have nitrosamine as impurities. Specifically, much common excipients which we use as microcrystalline cellulose, pregel starch, sodium starch glycolate, povidone, all these have residual nitrites and nitrates, and they are the excipients which we need to critically evaluate as formulation scientists to ensure that we do not have nitrosating agents in our formulation. So controlling nitrites and nitrates in excipients is not easy. It's a challenge. In rare instances, rather, excipients may have some amine residues which could react with the nitrite residues in other excipients, and then they can form nitrosamines. So a recent report indicated that in the production of water for injection, where residual chloramine was used to disinfect the incoming water, it reacted with dimethylamine leaching from the anion exchange resin used in the demineralization step, and it formed NDMA. So water is critical, excipients are critical, even plastic and rubber are potential source of NDBA. So even when these samples are being tested, or analytical colleagues, analytical scientists, when they are testing, if they are using plastic syringes or nylon filters, they may increase nitroso compounds, and you may have a wrong analysis and a wrong indication that nitrosamines are there in your product. Packaging materials for the drug product, which are composed of rubber or other